Welcome back to the Spiritual Uplevel Podcast. I'm your host, Jeri Cristine, and today I am honored to be interviewing Coach Kim Jones. Coach Kim is one of my best friend's coaches, and she is also close with a couple other people that I know, and they always speak so extremely highly of you, Kim. And I had the opportunity of meeting you once a few years ago, and I've been looking forward to this opportunity again and just sharing your story with everybody. So let me do a quick introduction and then we'll get started. So, Coach Kim Jones is a neuro-based movement coach. She integrates applied neurology with fundamental movement training to reduce threat in the nervous system, which allows the brain and body to work together for optimal performance. She is also a certified functional medicine health coach, retired IFBB pro bodybuilder, and mama to her beautiful Australian cattle dog, Rod. I love that you have a dog named Rod. I have a dog named Frank.
I love that.
So, Kim, thanks for being with us today.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and your bio is just part of your story. The story that we're really going to get into in a minute is the fact that you almost died from stage 4 oral cancer.
Mhm.
And just a couple years ago, maybe not even 2 years ago, that you have been healed
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you're on a healing journey. And I'm grateful for that. And I know everybody in your world is grateful that you're still here with us.
absolutely.
Before we get into that story, though, I want you to explain to those of us who don't quite understand what is a neuro-based movement coach, because it
Yeah,
sounds like something everybody needs. When I read that reduce threat in the nervous system so that your brain and body work together, I'm like, sold.
yeah. So I put that into any kind of bio, that specific line, because then it gives people something they can relate to. Because if I say I'm a neuro-based movement coach, it's like, what does that mean, right? So essentially, the brain's first job is survival. It's not performance. And I'm a movement coach. So I'm helping people get stronger in the gym or become more mobile. And so when you understand that the body, based on inputs and outputs, so if the brain doesn't have enough input, sound, taste, sight, proprioception, whatever, it's going to produce an output that's going to get you to stop whatever you're doing. And that could be pain, it could be lack of flexibility, it could be stiffness, tightness, dizziness, runner's knee, jumper's knee, back pain. The problem is it doesn't have enough input to kind of interpret interpret the input it is getting to kind of make a decision on what do we do next. So if it can't predict what's going to happen next, it goes into safety mode and it will get you to stop what you're doing. And so my job as a movement coach isn't just to teach people how to squat and do push-ups and pull-ups and lunge and hinge and rotate. It's let's do a neuro evaluation. Let's look at the way your eyes move or don't move. Let's look at your inner ear vestibular system. Let's look at your proprioceptive system. Like, does your brain know where your toes are? Can you move your toes? Does your, so I'm trying to kind of go through different brain areas to see where are the deficits and what do we need to address before we even start moving so that we have a better chance of getting to our goal a little bit faster. So imagine, to put this into context, imagine being, let's say, tight and you can't get good range in a squat or a lunge. Well, I can target a part of the brainstem that helps with hip extension. So I could say, okay, um, let's have you, what would that be? That would be pons to get extended. Let's have you trigeminal. Let's have you bite on like a tongue depressor while you try to get into that range and see if that helps you get better hip extension. And sometimes that works. And there's other things that I can activate in the nervous system to get better extension, to get better flexion, to get better rotation, to get more neural drive, to get more strength. So it's about kind of, I love it because I think it helps people connect dots. So if you're like, I roll out, I get massages, I do this, I do that, and those things work, but the issue never gets resolved. Sometimes it's because there's a deeper, I call it software issue. It's not necessarily just your hip or your back or your ankle. It's like there's a brain thing going on that we need to get to the root of. And then that's going to help open up movement patterns and range of motion and strength or what have you.
Oh my gosh. For those of our audience who are listening and not watching on YouTube, I'm just sitting here with my mouth gaping open because I'm like, what? You can get more flex. Like I teach yoga and I'm thinking you can get more flexibility in a squat from like biting down on a tongue depressor.
Essentially, yeah, or moving your eyes in a certain direction. Yeah, it doesn't
Wow.
seem like it's related, right? So for instance, a pencil push-up is something I have clients do where we basically try to get the eyes to converge together. And convergence is a part of the brainstem that helps with flexion. So if somebody can't bend over to touch their toes, sometimes it's the pencil push-up that can let the hamstrings release that stiffness to get into hip flexion. Doesn't work for everybody. Everybody's brain's different. But this is what I mean is that the nervous system can react so quickly that we're not talking about a 6 to 8 to 12 week process. We're talking about, okay, what action are we trying to achieve? What parts of the brain can help us achieve that? Let's do a few drills. And what we'll do is say, okay, do the thing you can't do. Okay, here's a drill. Follow this target, to the left. Okay, do the thing you can't do. And if you can do it better, we've decreased threat and we know what input your brain isn't getting to allow that range of motion or that depth or what have you. So it can be something that seems so unrelated, like an auditory stimulus, eye movement. It could be vestibular work, like doing VOR type stuff. It could be a number of things. It could be cerebellum, all these different brain areas. But I love it because it empowers people. So if you let's just say, Jeri, we're doing your own yoga session and you tweak something. Like I'm sure you have a protocol for what you're going to do to try to feel better. However, sometimes with my clients, they go into a deeper threat because they're thinking, oh my gosh, did I just injure myself badly, or like what's going to happen? And when you have this neuro background, you can kind of go to you can try different things. So the first thought isn't, oh my gosh, like, am I just totally going to be down for the count? That may cross their mind, but then it's like, well, if it's a knee thing, maybe I go to the opposite elbow, or if it's a left shoulder, maybe I go to the right hip. Maybe I do some pencil push-ups, or maybe I do this, or maybe I do that. And then it's empowering. And then people can get themselves out of situations that would normally kind of make them panic a little bit.
I love that because you see that so often where like for example, I had back surgery. I had a bulging disc that exploded with bone. I had bone shards in my sciatica. This was 10 years ago. But anytime a back thing would happen, I would be like, gonna have
Yeah.
surgery again, until I learned different techniques and you realize like everything's connected. And that panic that sets in when you're afraid something's gonna happen actually makes it way worse,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's fascinating.
Yes, if we can get if that's gonna it's a natural reaction, but also those signals are your brain's way of protecting you. So it doesn't mean something's injured. It can, but doesn't mean necessarily something's injured. It doesn't mean that you hurt yourself again. It's just saying, like something's not right. So we're going to get you to stop what you're doing right now and take a beat. And then if that happens, and then you have some things that you can do, neuro drills, then you can navigate it on your own and kind of get your brain out of that threat so that you're not kind of like panicking.
Wow. That is so fascinating, Kim. I didn't even know there was such a science. Is this something that there's people that do this all over the country?
Yeah,
Can
so there's two companies that I've worked through. The first one that I found in 2018 was called Z Health. Z as in
okay.
zebra. Z Health. They're on all social media. Z Health Performance Solutions, and they're on a ton of free stuff on YouTube, ton of stuff on Instagram. Z Health changed my life in 2018 because I had been coaching for about 18 years. At that point, maybe 16 or 17, and then I hear about this new way to help people move better and get stronger and get out of pain. And I'm like, why isn't this taught in normal personal training or strength and conditioning certifications? Because they're not. And then the other company that I learned from is Next Level Neuro. And they're predominantly on, I would say, Instagram and Facebook. I don't think they really have a big YouTube presence, but both of those companies, if you're somebody who is yoga practitioner, movement coach we even have chiropractors and physical physios, and we have people who are like therapists who work with like mental health. It all starts with the brain, really. So
Yeah.
it can teach you skills no matter what kind of avenue you are as a coach or a therapist. It'll teach you ways for sure to help your clients.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That is so fascinating. And I can imagine that a lot of our listeners are going, like me, like, what? I have to try this. I'm also thinking like my daughter, she's super, super athletic, like crazy athletic. She's only 11 and she has never been able to touch her toes. She
Gotcha.
also has some brain issues. She had a seizure when she was 6. She
Okay.
that Chiari malformation, where the brain stem hole is a little bit too big. And I'm wondering, like, I've never been able to figure out why she can't touch her toes when she's so extremely athletic. And I am willing to bet money after this conversation that there's something associated that you could help her with that would just do the trick.
Yeah, I think that with a good evaluation, definitely things will be discovered. If you think about moving forward to touch your toes, that's vestibular system. It's also a flexor-based movement, so maybe there's a imbalance between the flexor and extensor muscles. But yeah, I mean, that's something where through some evaluations, we could just say, hey, I think I have some ideas of where we can go. And then I just throw drills at her, and whichever ones get her closer to touching her toes, she does those like rehab. She does them
Yeah.
every day. And then gradually, I say you take the brain for a walk, gradually you access this new range of motion. And if you go into that range more often, the brain can predict what's going to happen. It feels safe. And then she's able to access that range after our sessions.
How cool. How cool. Yeah, after physical therapy for me, that was one of the challenges after my surgery was every time I would start running again, because I used to be a long distance runner and I would run and my body would tense up. It was expecting the pain and I had to retrain my brain to get over that. And it took quite a while. I remember being fascinated back then of like it's anticipating what's going to happen. Like you said, the brain wants to know that it's safe. It wants to know what's going to happen. If it can't predict it, then it's trying to protect you in ways that we don't even necessarily realize are associated. Wow.
Yeah, it's protection. And I
Yeah.
think that lens, especially as people get older, I don't like, oh, I'm just getting older. I'm like, no, it's just inputs and outputs. Yeah, there's wear and tear, but I think as we get older, if we can grasp this other concept of it's not necessarily age, it's just what info sensory wise is the brain not getting to understand that we can do this movement safely. And I think that's more empowering than I'm just getting old and I got to stop moving or I got to stop doing this or that. I think that's disempowering.
Totally. Yeah, totally. So Kim, the rest of your story, you come from this background of physical health and being supernatural. And I know, like, not just in your work, but like you were very natural, like, health, like as healthy as can be. I remember the first time I met you, I was like, oh my gosh, that woman is like the epitome of like a Greek goddess. Like, you
That's
know?
sweet. Thank you.
Uh, well, and then I heard from my friends that you had cancer, and I think it was such a shock to everybody, and I can only imagine what a shock it was to you.
Yeah.
Walk us through that experience.
It's the type of thing where it really makes you question everything because I was quote unquote doing all the right things. So I had these pillars that I would teach to my clients: movement, nutrition, detoxification, stress mitigation, and nutrition. And I was doing all those things. And I'm thinking, how does this happen? But there's an emotional component to cancer that I think obviously modern allopathic conventional medicine isn't going to touch, but I don't think people even connect those dots. So think of how kind of, in a sense, obvious this is that I have cancer that develops on my tongue. It spreads to my cervical lymph, so it's around my jaw, it's around my throat, and I'm somebody that didn't really feel safe and comfortable speaking up for myself since probably the age of mean, there's an incident that happened when I was probably 11 years old. And I made that decision to shut my voice down. I get that because I've done the work to understand that. However, that basically led into all parts of my life, whether it was having important conversations with bosses or colleagues or boyfriends or whatever. I wasn't really that comfortable at all, like speaking up for myself, and I was biting my tongue. And
Mm.
so I think that it was years of just suppressing stuff. And I was the type of person that would wait and wait and wait until I was going to boil over. And then I would finally say something. But that was decades of me doing that. And so I think, and then when I got treatment in cancer, so I mean, when I got treatment in Mexico, I was pretty late stage and didn't know it. However, there was a great psychiatrist there that talked to everybody about their cancer, their specific type of cancer, and like the emotional component that related to it. And he only really said what I kind of knew somewhat already, but it was great to hear it from a medical professional. But if I believe that with all the things I was doing, had I been somebody that maybe had less of a filter and maybe was just more comfortable speaking up and not really feeling like I didn't want to offend anybody, or I didn't want somebody to like me, or didn't want to, I don't know, whatever. I think this might not have happened. And so I honestly think that it happened for me. And I know that sounds probably crazy to a lot of people, but I live my life a lot differently now when it comes to speaking up. And sometimes it's this like knee-jerk stuff that I'll just respond or say something, obviously respectfully, but there's for sure things that I would let slide in the past or wouldn't really go super hard in the paint trying to defend myself. And that's changed right now. So I think that lifestyle wise, outside of maybe not getting enough sunrises in my day and maybe not kind of getting enough, I mean, I was in the sun, maybe not as much as I should have been, but I think the bigger component was just suppressing my voice.
Yeah. I've seen that so many times with people that have cancer is that wherever it manifests is where they stuff it,
Yeah.
the emotions down. One of the first books that led me on this spiritual journey is Anita Moorjani's Dying to Be Me. Have you read
Okay.
her book?
Oh,
It's so good. She died of cancer. She had lymphatic cancer and died, and then had the opportunity to come back, and it miraculously completely cleared up in 24 hours. And
wow.
she too lives her life completely differently. And she talks about the emotional component of how that she always lived in fear.
Mm.
And the fear just embodied throughout her entire body. So very similar story, but she talks about that, how cancers manifest when we aren't true to ourselves and allowing ourselves to come out and fully express, and we're stuffing our story and our truth down inside.
Yeah, our mutual friend Kim says that what the mind suppresses, the body expresses. And so
Mm.
that's so valid. I mean, and I can even go into something that I experienced before kind of I made the decision of like where to get treatment and all that, that really opened my eyes to all this. So I was doing a ceremony, I was doing a psilocybin ceremony, and typically I've got the eye covers on, I'm lying down. It's usually a pretty kind of like relaxing for me, my experiences prior to this. But in May of 2023, I had the craziest experience. It was like hour three. I took the blindfold off and I was trying to say something, but I didn't know what I was trying to say. It was so bizarre. And the sound, the S sound, like that kept coming out. And I was like, what am I, like, what am I trying to say? And then all of a sudden the word say came out and I just was repeating say. And then, kid you not, and this happened for like 2 hours. It felt like there was something in my mouth, and I would try. So I'd say. I'd say that a few times, and then I'd kind of like grab at my lips, and it would feel like something was in my mouth, almost like hair, and I would pull it out, and I would do that for a few minutes, and then kind of like lie back down. And that was the cycle for like 2 hours. And I had this epiphany during ceremony where I was like, because it felt like I was pulling it out of somewhere deep and dark and just like dank. And I was like, no wonder you're sick. I mean, it felt like that's the stuff that I was holding in and suppressing like my whole life. And I was finally starting to kind of release it somehow. And I can't even, it's so crazy how real it felt. Whatever that was I was pulling out felt so real. And then the imagery that I got in regards to how deep, like the depths of my soul is where I was pulling the stuff out of. And this was the same day that I got my first PET scan. And though an ENT doctor had confirmed, he was like, I need a biopsy, but I'm 99.9% sure this is cancer. So I got this PET scan. It was that same night, and it was confirmed basically, like it's in your cervical lymph, the tumor's on your tongue, it's this many centimeters, what have you. And it was after that experience that I kind of felt more prepared to kind of take this head on, because I was so natural. I didn't want to get a biopsy because I thought that could create spread. And I'm thinking, I don't want to make this situation worse. And so I kind of dragged my feet for a while in regards to like, what do I do? But it was revealing ceremony, and it was also something that prepared me for how crazy. I mean, this type of cancer it's bad. I'm talking like gruesome type of stuff that happens if you let it get to where I let it go, where I had two really big bulges coming out of my each side of my neck that were basically necrotic, basically tumors, excuse me. And then I had two tumors here that were starting to kind of protrude out. And so that whole recovery process was the most painful thing, like excruciatingly painful thing I've ever been through. And I do feel like that ceremony and previous ceremonies of me just kind of like working on myself and kind of understanding, in my opinion, why these things happen and how we can grow from them and evolve from them helped me feel like I'm going to get through this as opposed to I'm going to die from this.
Wow. I have two questions. My first question is that, like, when you were going through all of that, and I can imagine like how painful, oh my gosh, like, because you eat, you swallow food, you talk, everything is associated with your throat and your mouth. Like, was was the whole time were you thinking I'm going to get through this, or did it get to a point where you're like, this sucks so bad and I don't know if I am going to make it or if I want to make it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So this is the part that just thinking back on it, I'm just so glad that I had this perspective. But I believe that I chose this, like based on different things that I've read and I've heard and I've listened to in regards to incarnations. You know, you choose your family and
Mhm.
you kind of choose what this life's going to look like. And so when I was going through this, I was thinking, you chose this, and not even as a punishment, but like if this is what you chose, I told myself this, you didn't choose it to die. You chose it because this is probably like the harshest, most difficult thing that's going to get you to change. I don't know if it was karmic stuff or if it was like stuff that in lifetimes I had never resolved, but deep to my core, I thought you didn't choose this to die. And so that for sure helped me get through everything. And then also I got two types of treatment. I went to Mexico for a few weeks and it didn't work. I still believe in natural medicine. Knowing what I know now, I was too far gone at that point to try to go 100% natural. But when I went to the conventional route, August of 2023, I was in that hospital for 6 weeks. My first bout of chemo, I remember I felt like I got hit by a bus. I mean, I was 90 something pounds. I was frail. I could barely get into the hospital bed. I could barely adjust myself in the hospital bed. My brothers, Tim and George, were just, I mean, they came through for me. They were there all the time, like back and alternating. And there was a point where George was just kind of like, he had me and was like pulling me up, but he just was telling me like, you gotta fight. Cause I'm telling you, if I could have pushed a button to end it, like I would have. If it were an option, that's the only time ever where I thought, I don't know if I can really do this. And if it wasn't for him being there, like, thank God this wasn't during COVID and stuff where you couldn't have visitors in the hospital, because I think that would have been a completely different experience, not having my brothers and there and visitors there. But that was the only time I was close to feeling like I could call it right now and be fine. And then I will also say that I wasn't attached to the outcome of surviving it either. It's like I had a feeling I was going to get through this. Didn't know how, but I was like, I have a feeling I'm going to get through this. But I was okay with dying at the same time. Yeah, I was like, if this is it, that's fine. I think it's probably a little bit easier when you don't have kids and you haven't served your own family. And so that might be a different type of situation for somebody who has a big family. But I was like, like, if this is it, I'm ready to go. But deep inside, I was like, I don't think it's my time. So it was a weird kind of situation where these two things were kind of bouncing around in my head.
Wow. And what a testament to we're supposed to do life with people together and not on our own.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we don't have the strength to deal with whatever we're going through, and having somebody there who loves you and can motivate you. I mean, you go by Coach Kim, but it sounds like he was your coach in that moment.
He coached me up for sure. And you bring up a good point because you also have to have the strength to ask for help. And
Mm,
and I, my acupuncturist, Diana LaGrassa, I remember she would always say, are you open to receive? Are you able to receive? And I wasn't. And even like before Mexico, and when I was doing the home treatment from Mexico, I was really trying to do this all on my own. And it wasn't helping. I was slowly declining. It was not helping at all. I wasn't sleeping. I had zero gut motility. To your point earlier, the tumor was so big across the midline, I couldn't really eat. I didn't have enough energy to even get up and make shakes. Some days I was dying. It's like I was dying and didn't even know it. And one of my really good friends, Darcy, was visiting me, and she was like, "Why are you?" She asked me in a really eloquent way, because I was waiting for my money, the GoFundMe money, to that account to build up to the amount that I needed to go to Mexico, and I had it, and I was sitting on it, and she was like, "What's stopping you from going right now?" And I was like, "Huh, that's a good point." She was just saying, "You need people to take care of you. You need to be able to just relax and let people help." And I think being single and being independent and falling into, I think, some really unhelpful kind of stereotypes about like being the independent woman that can do things for herself. I think I kind of played myself. I know I did. And I think that really made it hard for me to ask for help. And I would always be the one that was like, I'll just do it myself. I'll just do it myself. Right. And this taught me to fall back, ask for help, and receive it when it comes.
that's awesome. And has that been like, after everything you went through, was that transition to being more willing to ask for help, and the transition of being more willing to speak out for yourself and speak up for yourself? Did you find that fairly easy after this whole experience, or do you still have to remind yourself to do it?
It was easy. It was easy. I felt like there's a point in time. There's another guy that I work with who I love to death. And I remember telling her during a recent ceremony, I was telling her, it felt like cancer had its foot on my neck and was like, you will soften. And we were working on softening too, because as a coach and being a college strength coach, I'm working with football and baseball and men's volleyball and women's teams too. And I'm 5'2", I'm short, so I have to walk into a weight room and I have to command my presence. And that masculine part of my personality was just carrying over everywhere. I wasn't just leaving it in the weight room. And so I felt like cancer like put its foot on my throat, was like, you will soften. And it did. I mean, it broke me down. It broke me down. It stripped me down. The person I was before, that version of myself, I think there's a lot died with the dying off of the cancer, and I'm okay with that because I still have the I think the parts that are going to help me prevent this from happening again, to be honest, within just my like DNA now.
Wow. What is your mission now after having went through all this? Has your mission in life changed?
It's a really good question. I think there's no coincidences, right? So the fact that it's twofold. The fact that I was learning the neuro right before this happened gave me something to get back to. And I love helping people. So I still think my mission is to help people just get out of pain, move better, do things that they love to do, kind of give them their life back in regards to being active, or like if there was some injury that prevented them from playing a sport or doing something recreational, I would love to be a part of their team to help them get back on that path. I think that's one part of my mission. And then I think this is also part of my mission too, is speaking about this experience, because the things that I was exposed to prior to this cancer experience also gave me the insight of how possible it is to survive cancer. I think a lot of people think it is a death sentence.
Mhm.
And like my mom had esophageal cancer, and I saw how crazy that operation was and that recovery. And right after that, this was like 2015, 16, I got my chiropractor back in Los Angeles, where I was living, shot me this documentary and the truth about cancer. And it just, I mean, my mind was blown because it was the first time that I was hearing stories of people who were surviving cancer and who were using these alternative methods that I had never heard of. And so all of that was very imperative for me to know going into my experience, because maybe it's different if a doctor would have said, hey, you have 3 months to live, because I think Dispenza's done science on that, where people usually die like to the day of that prognosis if they hear that. So I was never told you're going to die or you have X amount of weeks. I was told I was bad. There was no hiding how bad off I was, but I knew it was something that you could heal from. And so I want to be able to share that with people, is that, yeah, we don't, I think it's tough. We don't really exactly know what our fate is, but I do think that, just like with what we were talking about at the top about the nervous system and the brain and threat, if that is your mindset going into treatment, and let's just say this, when I was having to go to conventional treatment, I had to surrender to that. All this stuff that I was just like adamantly against and thought it's toxic and it kills people, laundry list of things. I had to surrender to that and get the help that I needed, because otherwise I was going to die. And so just being open to that and having the mindset of, okay, yes, I know what hospital food is like. It's not organic, grass fed, right? It's hospital food. Yes, I know chemo, all this stuff, but I would say, this is healing. Thank you for the healing substances that are going into my body. Thank you for the healing. Thank you for the healing medicine that's going into my body. I had to make sure my body knew that this was helping and it wasn't hurting. And I just want to let people know that, mindset is so incredibly powerful when it comes to these types of health crises.
Yeah. That reminds me of a study that I heard, totally different kind of topic, but they did a study where they gave the same milkshake to two different groups. And one, they told them it was like healthy, all fruits, and it was totally healthy and you should lose weight. And the other group, they told them it was a milkshake and it's not good for you. And it was exactly the same one. The one that they told was healthy, they did great. They actually did lose weight. They felt great. The other group got fat. They
Yeah.
gained weight,
Yeah.
same milkshake. It was just what they believed about it. And I find that fascinating because I'm constantly telling my kids that the crap that they want to eat is crap and it's bad for them. And I'm like, I should stop saying that. But I would be the same way with cancer treatment, I love that you're sharing how you went into it with your mindset. more people need to hear that, because if you need that, like you said, you needed it. There came a point where you had to have it. And you went into it though, instead of thinking, oh my God, I'm putting poison in my body, you went into it with a mindset of gratitude, and that probably completely changed your body's response to it.
Absolutely. I would have never thought in a million years that chemo was going to be the thing that was allowing me to eat again.
Yeah.
I mean, I was strictly fluids, and in the hospital, they put this powder, this thickening agent, so that I wouldn't aspirate. So strictly liquid. And then by week 2.5, there's different foods, grades of foods you can have. And I think, God, it wasn't minced and moist, but it was like this definite, it was this category of food. I was able to actually, it's like pudding, or it was almost like Play-Doh-y type of food. Point is, by the time I left the hospital, I was eating on one side of my mouth. And it had to be really moist. Like I moved up, I forgot what that first level was, but then I went up to minced and moist. And that meant that I was eating like solid foods, but it just had to have condiments or something on it so it was moist. Never would have in a million years would have thought that chemo was going to get me to that place. But I thought, what a great place to just surrender and just for once in my life, let go of the wheel and just be okay with taking not taking orders, but being able to be open to whatever the nurses or the doctors wanted me to do. It was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I I think it was a valuable experience. And I think in regards to my mission, it's also for the people who are like me to understand that sometimes that super hardcore dogma of just 100% natural all the time, never, yeah, obviously we don't want to put stuff into our system that isn't natural. But if I would have stuck to that, I would have died. There's no doubt or question in my mind because I was dying. And so I think sometimes, and it opened a lot of my friends' minds too. A lot of my friends out here in Arizona, same mindset, and they have kids, and they always thought if myself or my husband or my wife or my kids have cancer, yeah, we're going to Germany, we're going to Europe, we're going to Mexico, and you still can. And that stuff does work. Natural medicine does work, but it's also super nuanced. And um, I think that maybe if I would have gone integrative in Mexico, it would have been different. But the point is, I just had to be open. And
Yeah.
and that's what conventional medicine is good for. When you are if there's a crisis or acute trauma, I mean, it's like if you get hit by a bus, that's what conventional medicine is really good at, is that kind of like trauma-based care. And I was needing trauma-based care and it helped.
Yeah. I think there's something also you said, like for once you had to let go of the wheel and
Yeah.
you had to let go of control. And I know like myself and my people are type A women. We are. We think we're in control. We try to control every single situation, a lot of times because of trauma from when we're younger.
Mhm.
And that's our trauma response as an adult. And I too have found that, wow, when you let go of the wheel, life all of a sudden gets pretty magical when you're
Yeah,
not trying to control everything. And, a lot of us, it takes getting to the point of a crisis before we're willing to do that. But I can imagine that your life now is a lot less controlling and a lot more go with the flow.
for
Am I
sure.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Even just with building my business back up, I lost everything basically. And so when I was able to start working again somewhat last spring, around this time last year, I had to, especially over the summer, because sometimes summer's slower here. It's so hot, people leave. Yeah, I just had to surrender to the fact that things were happening on time as they were supposed to, and not trying to kind of it's like, yeah, as a business, as an entrepreneur, yeah, there's things that you can do to build up your business, but at the same time, allowing myself the grace to continue to heal, physically, emotionally, mentally from all this, but also respect timing. And I just, for the first time, wasn't ruminating about business and like posts on social media and like, how am I going to build this up and how am I going to get clients for this? And it just naturally kind of built up on its own. And I didn't really do anything that I would have thought I would have had to have done in the past to start from scratch. And that's just from just it's a testament to just letting go and surrendering to the different seasons and how there's ebbs and flows with the business and how when it's supposed to ramp back up it will. And truth be told, I was dealing with some because of my full treatment was I had only had radiation 4 times. It was over a weekend, but it was predominantly chemo every 2 weeks and Keytruda immunotherapy every 6 weeks. And so the Keytruda did a number on my GI system. And so, I mean, I look back and it's like I didn't have the energy or the mental. I still had chemo fog a little bit from last spring. So it wouldn't have been good to have a packed schedule last spring or summer. So it's just the timing was impeccable. Things picked up when my health was probably the best coming out of this, and I'm still healing, but it all worked out the way it was supposed to.
Yeah. It's amazing when I like the saying, let go and let God.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy to trust. Even when you see good things happening, sometimes I know when I go like, okay, but what if I just try to control this part, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Kim, what are you doing today to continue to heal and continue to be in this space of trusting and using your voice? What
So I think what's important is for me specifically is not getting too deep into the masculine. So with what I do, it takes a lot of thought going into certain types of sessions, like neuro-based sessions, and I can geek out and study a lot and really dig into the books and be kind of like on that masculine side of things, super calculated and just focused on like work and efficiency. And before I got sick, one of my goals after one of my ceremonies was to travel more and not even international, but just get away for the weekend, like take a break and balance the work and the play. And I never followed through with that. But I have since this happened. And so, gosh, since last June, and mind you, this all happened March of 2023. Like I moved here with a little patch on my tongue, but it wasn't cancerous. The biopsy didn't show that it was cancerous. However, and I moved here in February of 2020. March of 2023, my tongue blew up. That's the first symptom. So we're talking about what, March, a year and 4 months. After that is pretty much when I was kind of like trying to get back into the swing of things. And shoot, what was your question? I'm sorry.
what have you done? What are you doing now
Oh,
to
traveling. Yes, sorry. So a month and a half into it, I visited my oldest brother that was like holding me up, helping me fight. I visited him in Evanston in September. My friend Darcy that I talked about earlier, I went to Sago, Idaho to visit her over the summer. Like I've had multiple trips just within the United States. And it's usually about like every month and a half, every 2 months, I get away, and those are great resets. And for me, I'm just being super conscious and mindful about that, making sure that, and I can feel when it happens. I can feel when I'm bogged down. I'm feeling kind of like I'm falling back into the old patterns. When I recognize that and I can sense it and I can feel it, and that's when I make the effort to do something, even if it's just go to Sedona or right I'm from LA. That I went back home for Thanksgiving because my mom and I had reconciled, and that was part of kind of where I lost my voice. So that for me, that's what I do, and I think that everybody probably has a thing or two that they know just when they fall into those patterns, life feels harder, life feels heavier, it feels like less rewarding. And I think if we can acknowledge when we're in those stages and then have an exit strategy to kind of proactively kind of combat that, I think it kind of brings us back to like a comfortable, healthy homeostasis.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. I like how you said too, when you fall back into the masculine, that's something I can really relate to. I came from a really masculine energy that was just how I operated. until I started on this spiritual journey a few years ago. And I can totally understand that when you feel like that heaviness and like things are getting back to harder and
Yeah.
just, but for women like us who are used to being in that space, like sometimes the feminine energy feels strange, and like how to balance that or learn to live in that space. And I too have found that like traveling and just taking a break is the easiest way to kind of ease into that and find that new homeostasis, that new balance between the two.
Yeah, and it actually helps. So when I get to the masculine, it's about business and like, okay, I'm trying to make sure that I have X amount of clients or what have you, be profitable. But that actually doesn't help really. I don't feel like
No.
that productive. Yeah, and then I go travel and I come back and I have emails like, "Hey, coach, I want to start back up." It's like you get rewarded for like honoring yourself in that regard.
It's so true. In my industry, in real estate, they always say if you need a sale, book a flight. Like as soon when you're on the flight, you'll get a contract, you know. And that's so true. I found that too. Like the harder, it's almost like when I'm in that space, that masculine energy, it's like I'm squeezing the life out of whatever it is that I'm trying to control. And if
Yeah.
I just like let go, it just happens. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey for me to realize like, oh, think I'm controlling things, it usually doesn't turn out that good. So I might as well let go.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I'm also just trying. I'm not trying. I'm also navigating this new kind of era of mine where I am respecting the feminine and exploring it and figuring out what that means. Because, like you, my background, I grew up with three brothers, tomboy, like super masculine, everything. Came from a college strength and conditioning background, so it's still a little foreign, but I respect it, and I it's just fascinating how easier life feels when I can kind of fall into that space. And so I'm still working on learning how to kind of fluctuate between both of them.
Well, I just want to encourage you because I feel like that part of this next phase of your life is going to be definitely you talking about your story and how what you've done differently, how you've changed, and just encouraging people that are facing a diagnosis like you did that it doesn't mean a death sentence. And there's ways through that have, like you said, even though you did the traditional route, you didn't completely because you used mindset so much with that.
Yeah, and if I can, because I know we're getting close to time, I also respected my philosophy and belief system on natural healing. And um Alina, sound healer, a friend of mine, I was also, when I was home, I was also getting weekly sound healing, and turkey tail mushroom like was a banger for me. So I still kind of I was seeing my acupuncturist to help with detoxification, making sure like chi and energy was flowing. And so there's definitely space to do both. But yeah, but to your point, just that's the biggest message for anybody that was like me in regards to the whole I've got this firm grasp on how I would do things. If you never know until you're in it. And then when you're in it, you just have to be open.
Yeah, that's so true. You can't know. Everybody's journey is different and everybody's situation is different. And I'm grateful for you for sharing your story because I know if that was something that I had to go through or a loved one, I would look to somebody like you to help with that balance and just the encouragement of finding your own path through it. So thank you
And
so much for sharing. If somebody wants to connect with you, how do they reach you?
so I would say my website is coachkimjones.com, and you can shoot me an email through there. So coachkimjones.com. Instagram is jones.strength. And I think my TikTok is Jones_strength. But the best way would be the website because you can email me, or
Okay.
DM me through Instagram. And I'm super open about helping people who are in this situation or who have loved ones who are in this situation and just want to like talk or just whatever. Like I'm super open to helping people who are in kind of like in the depths and the throes of something pretty drastic with their health when it comes to cancer.
Awesome. Thank you. And I have two questions I ask everybody um, at the end of our interview. And the first one is, what is one book that you recommend that everybody read?
There's this book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, who was a former terrorist negotiator or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's with the FBI or the CIA. I've read this
Oh
book.
gosh.
I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. Like I haven't even finished it. I've gone through most of it, but so many valuable tools walking into meetings, especially at my old job. I would walk into meetings feeling super equipped with how to start the meeting and how to like respond to certain things. I feel like life is full of opportunities to negotiate. So I think that's a super helpful book.
Especially with what you were talking about, like speaking your truth. You
Yeah.
know, he talks about connecting with the other person and understanding what is their whole point, what is their motive. And imagine, I've read the book and listened to it. Both are good. I don't always recommend that because some of them aren't as interesting, but his, if you listen to it, it's just as good as the book. But he talks about, like you said, going into these terrorist negotiation, you know, like it's just like 99.99% of us will never be in the situations that this guy was in. And
Right.
so, but we can take what he did in those situations into any situation. You know, sometimes when we're dealing like with our mom, it feels like a hostage situation, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Or certainly with bosses and different things like that, you know, and but it's all about like relationships, connecting with the other person and understanding what is their motive and how can you come to a win-win situation that doesn't involve a hostage getting killed, you know?
Yeah, and how to disarm if something does escalate, how to disarm that situation and how to feel more empowered and not like, oh, I gotta go to this, whatever, and more like, let's try this out and see how it works. I love that book.
I
Yeah.
love that you brought that one up. It's not one that like no one else has brought that book up, and I love that you brought that up. So good job. Good work. And then what is one thing that you recommend, or sorry, what is one thing that you wish everyone in the world knew?
I mean, I think it's going back to what we said earlier is that let's just say pain, physical pain. Let's just say if you're ever back pain, shoulder pain, some sort of pain that's preventing you from doing what you love to do, know that it's just the brain protecting you. It's not your body letting you down. It's not you just slowly kind of like decaying. It's just your brain trying to protect you. And if you could understand that and speak to your body in a way that it's not broken or it's not breaking down, I think that's the first step towards finding solutions.
That's beautiful. Coach Kim Jones, thank you so much for being a light in this world and for sharing your light. I always say, I always encourage people to let their light shine because you're one light in a dark room. All of a sudden people can see, that one light, and then that one light lights other lights. And I feel like your message and your story, both with what you're doing for work and your story of healing, how you healed through cancer, is such a light in a dark space. And I just am really grateful that I had this opportunity to get to know you better and to share your story with my audience.
I'm grateful to be here to be able to share. Thanks, Jeri.
Absolutely.